I can't buy the air I breathe. I can't buy the trees. I can't buy the deepest seas. But it don't matter, 'cause they're there for free.
Hello and welcome to Around the World in 88 Tales with me, David Heathfield, at the Royal Albert Memorial Museum in Exeter. And I'm so happy to be with Philippa this morning. Philippa Kabali-Kagwa. Philippa, how are you?
I'm very well, David. How are you?
I'm fine. And can I ask, where are you?
I'm in Cape Town at the moment, right down at the bottom of the continent.
In South Africa.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Mm.
And can I ask you just to tell us a little bit about yourself and about storytelling and your interest in this project?
Well, I'm a Ugandan South African storyteller. I grew up in Uganda, East Africa, and my parents told stories, and I found I made sense of my life through storytelling. I use stories in my work as a facilitator and organization development consultant. I perform in museums, in galleries, in schools, and wherever I need to tell stories. I think we all need stories. And my interest in this project has been I just like the idea of taking something old and historical and trying to connect it to stories. And there are lots of treasures from this part of the world that are housed in Europe and the UK. And for me, this is one way of claiming them back and taking them back home. Yeah. That's a double A. Yeah, the two reasons I'm really interested in this project.
You're right. There are many, many artifacts from all different parts of Africa and
Mm,
the former colonies.
mm,
And it's really important to recognize these heritages and value where they come from as learning, and to talk about the history of how these artifacts were acquired as well.
mm, mm.
So here, I'm just, for everybody who's watching, just round the world, just as a, if you don't know already, and I'm sure you do, here's Uganda. This is your home country, I believe,
Yes.
and you're now in South Africa, in Cape Town.
My other home.
Your other home, fantastic.
Yes. And Uganda just turned 50, well, celebrated 59 years of independence. I don't think she's 59. I think she's much, much older than that. But yeah, on Saturday, it was 59 years of independence.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, our artifact that's going to inspire our stories today is one of my favourites. It's this wooden figure. It's very simple. A wooden figure, a human figure, about this big. It's it was found here in Devon, in near Kingstainton, in a clay quarry
Mhm.
about 160 years ago,
Wow.
and now it's been dated to 2,400 years approximately. So this is the Iron Age, and there's very little from pre-Roman history that's like this in the UK. This is one of only 6 figures, and the only one here in the southwest of England that's been found that's anything like this. And we don't know its meaning. We don't
Mm,
know its history. It might be
mm,
an offering to the gods.
mm,
But when I look at this object, I think of what is it to be a human? So I'm going to tell a story, and my story actually comes from the San people of southern Africa,
mm.
but I've adapted it. It's my retelling, and here's the story that I want to share. I walked. early in the morning before the sunrise, barefoot in the grass, and the grass was wet with dew. And I looked up into the sky, and I saw that the moon was weeping. Moon, why are you crying? I'm crying, said the moon, because I want to be like humans. Why do you want to be like the humans? Humans live forever. Humans never die. You say that humans don't die. Humans die. And I spoke to the moon and invited the moon to come. And the moon stepped down from the sky. I showed the moon a home where an old man was taking his final gasping breath. Look, humans die, I said to the moon. But moon continued weeping. A moon brought me to another home. And in this home I heard the sound of a newborn baby crying, making its first sound, taking its first breath. And I looked, and there was the mother nursing the child. And there was the father. Humans never die, said the moon. There are always more. You have each other, and when you are together, there are always more humans. But I am alone, and at the end of my days, I will die. And the moon stepped up into the sky, and the moon's weeping continued, which is why, when I walk barefoot in the early morning before the sun rises, the grass is wet with dew. Thank you. Okay. Well, Philippa Kabali-Kagwa is with us from South Africa, originally from Uganda. Philippa, have you got a story that you would like to share with us?
Yes, I do. It's a story from Uganda. I called it Walukaga's Dilemma. Some people call it Walukaga the Blacksmith. And it's interesting for me. What pulled me about this image was it's that trying to make an image that looks like a human being. And it's interesting that it's in the Iron Age. That's when it was dated. And I couldn't find a story about a carpenter because that's what I wanted, or an artist. But I did find a story about a blacksmith. So Walukaga was a well-known blacksmith. His works were shared all over the land, and people spoke about him with such respect. In the kingdom where he lived, the king had multiple pieces created by Walukaga because he wasn't just a tradesman, he was an artist. Now the king, when he asked someone to do something, you knew that it was not a request, it was a demand. And if you did not meet his demand, well, heavens be with you, because that was the kind of king he was. One day, the king's messengers came and said, Walukaga, the king would like to see you. Walukaga hurried and cleaned himself up, put on his best kanzu, and hurried to the palace. And he lay down and he praised the king and he greeted him, and then he sat and waited. because of course you don't ask the king why he wants you. The king told him, Walukaga, Walukaga, you are my greatest treasure, and I have told people about you all across the lands. In fact, in 3 months' time, there will be a meeting of kings from other lands. And I have told them that you are going to make for me a human being. Walukaga looked at the king and he said, I can make you an image of a human being, Your Majesty. I can do that with my iron. And the king said, No, 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 no. I do not want an image of a human being. I want a living, breathing human being. And no one in my kingdom except you can do that. Walukaga looked at the king in dismay. But the king had finished talking and had turned to the next people. And so Walukaga slowly retreated out of the palace. And he went back home dejected. And his wife said, Walukaga, Munnange chichi, what happened in the palace? And he said, Well, it is the end of me. It is the end of me. There is nothing I can do. And his wife asked him what happened. And when he told his wife the request of the king, well, they sat there, hand on cheek, neither one of them knowing what to do, each one of them filled with dread. They started counting the days to Walukaga's demise. One day, Walukaga woke up early in the morning and he decided to go up the mountains where he had roamed as a child. And he found a spot under a big tree and he sat on a log to think, what could he do? He could not go to the king and tell him, I can't do it, it's impossible, because the king would kill him. While he sat there, Mubidu, an old childhood friend, came to him. Now, Mubidu was the village madman. He roamed the hills. He didn't have a steady place where he stayed. His hair was matted and crazy, and his clothes always in tatters. Mubiru sat next to Walukaga and said, Walukaga, my friend, hey, it's been a long time. Hey, I haven't seen you in such a long time. How are you? They spoke a while. Then Mubiru said, you look so depressed. What is going on? So Walukaga told him, well, I've had this request from the king. And he told him the whole story. And Mubiru looked at him and shook his head and he said, Walukaga, my friend, you are finished. This is the end. And Walukaga said, yes, I think it is. But then Mubiru had an insight and he told Walukaga, this is what you must do. And Walukaga listened intently. And then he hurried, thanked his friend and hurried home and told his wife, tomorrow I'm going to the king. But this is what I want you to do. Prepare for me 3 large pots. And then he called his wife and children and he told his wife, shave my head. And she shaved his head and said, keep the hair. And he shaved her head and they shaved all their children's head and they put all their hair in a sack. And then in the morning, he put onions on their eyes, and so their eyes were streaming with tears. And they poured a little water into one of the pots. And then they carried the pots and the sack to the palace. And the king saw Walukaga and he said, Walukaga, are you finished with my project? Walukaga said, no, Your Majesty. It's coming along, but I have come up with a problem. You see, in order for me to make this living, breathing human being, I need 3 pots of tears because we need special water. And I need charcoal made from human hair. I need 20 sacks of that. Now, I thought I could do it with my family, but we have cried. We have cried for a month, and this is how much tears we have been able to gather. And so the king, I need you to call the community and to gather the tears of the whole community and the hair of the whole community. King said, done. And so the next day, the community came and they cried into the pots and they cut their hair. And after a week, there was barely one pot of tears. And there was hardly any hair to make 20 sacks. And the king looked at his people who looked completely miserable. His queen had no hair. His courtiers had no hair. And their eyes were red from crying. And he called Walukaga and he said, Walukaga, you have asked me to do an impossible task. I will not be able to deliver on this. But you, my friend, are wise, because I realize now that the task I asked you to do was impossible. So you don't have to make me a living, breathing human being. Walukaga was so happy. And he told the king, you know who gave me this advice? It was Mubiru. And he said, sometimes the people we think are mad and can't contribute to the society are actually the wisest. And from that day, Mubiru was treated with a different kind of love. And that is the end of my story.
Philippa, thank you so much. What a beautiful story, and so beautifully told as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
I absolutely love that. And there was a connection I felt between the story that I shared from the Sand People that I retold. I actually heard that story told by another storyteller called Richard Martin, and I adapted it from him. But that connection of tears, of the tears, and both stories telling us so much about human nature as well. We think we're alone, but I think, if anything, this project for me is teaching me about connection and how we are a global community. And humans, we're not alone, and we need to remember this, because sometimes, certainly where I live, people can act in a very individualistic way.
Yes. No, I think we, it's become cliched, the whole idea of Ubuntu, but I am because of the people in my life. And for me, tears at this particular moment in time is, it's a very important thing, because I think we've forgotten how to grieve, and COVID is not allowing us to grieve in the ways that we have normally grieved. And we have lost not just people, but so much. And so I think there's another thing about the weeping and the needing to release, but the idea that together, once we have grieved, and together we can, and that wisdom lies in unexpected places. For me, that's really important.
The concept of Ubuntu is very important in Uganda and around Africa. Can you tell us, for people who don't know, could you just tell us very briefly about Ubuntu?
And in Uganda, we call it, in Buganda, where I come from, Ubuntu Bulamu. It's that idea that I am because of the people around me, that while I am important as an individual, I am even more powerful when I connect with the community and the people around me, and how important it is for me to take care of community and to be taken care of by community. That is more important than my own individual gain and my own individual glory, as it were.
Thank you. Thank you for that, and something for us all to remember at this time of strife. We need to come together as a global community. Thank you very much, Philippa Kabali-Kagwa. Thank you so much for being part of Around the World in 88 Tales. And I wish you all the best.
I can't buy the trees. I can't buy the don't matter, 'cause they're there for free.